wasted away again in Margaritaville. Searching for my breakfast with Bob.
Hi, Jimmy, everybody. Welcome. Day 4, Breakfast with Bob from Kona and Huggo's on the Rocks. My name is Bob Babbitt, brought to you by Master Spas, SFuels Go Longer, HOKA Let's Fly, deboer Wetsuits, Forum Smart Swim Goggles, Zoot Sports, original triathlon brand, Quintana Premium Plus Sports, and of course our Challenge Athletes Foundation. Our next guest, the CEO of USA Triathlon, the first female CEO in USA Triathlon history, Victoria Brumfield joins us. How you
Good
doing,
morning.
Victoria?
I'm great. How are you, Bob?
USA, exactly. So Victoria, you're here in Kona, the first ever all-women's Ironman World Championship. What are your thoughts?
It's incredible. I can't get over, first of all, the energy is phenomenal. And second, it's just such a pivotal moment when we think about the history of sport. And we've always had equity in our sport, right? Women participating from the very beginning. We've got Julie Moss in 1982 really bringing the sport to life. But now to really see the equity growing where women have the same number of slots as men and the same amount of visibility. And I think it's so important and exciting.
No question. And it's funny because over the years when you look at endurance sports, I mean, they didn't even have the marathon in the Olympics for women until 1984. And they didn't have a 1,500 for women until 2020, believe it or not. So triathlon has always been equal prize money, always been equal time cutoffs. It doesn't matter if male or female. You got to get to the bike cutoff, the run cutoff, and finish by midnight, or boom, you're gone.
Well, and it's the same rules, and it's the same course, and it's the same distance.
Exactly.
And so I think that's actually something that's really special about our sport, and it's been that way from the very beginning. And like you said, it hasn't been that way in the majority of sports, and continue to see inequity across sports in distance, time, rules, and that's something that I think is really special about triathlon.
Well, when you look at a sport like volleyball, they have a lower net. You look at basketball, they have a smaller ball. You look at tennis, they play 3 sets rather than 5 sets. There's been no adaptation for a woman doing this sport. You've got to be able to. It's an equal opportunity abuser. It doesn't care. So speaking of USA Triathlon, there was a huge growth back in 2000 when the triathlon got into the Olympics. USA Triathlon at that point had, I don't know what their membership was, but it became like 125,000 member, huge boom. Gwen Jorgensen won in 2016. I'm sure that led to a big growth. Where is USA Triathlon at now in terms of numbers, and how are you seeing it pacing?
Well, it is really interesting. You talk about the start of the sport. I think we're actually about to celebrate our 50th anniversary as a sport next year in San Diego.
September 25th.
Right, so looking forward to that. And obviously here in Kona started in 1978. And we did see growth in the sport through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But once we got into the Olympics in 2000, you really saw exponential growth. That growth actually started to cap out around 2012, 2013, and we saw a decline in the sport. And it wasn't just triathlon, it was endurance sports across the board. And so what we've seen recently is the sport stabilized around 2017, 2018, started to grow again in 2019. But then we hit COVID.
Yeah.
And it was devastating, obviously, worldwide, but especially for sports like triathlon. And so what we've seen most recently is actually a huge boom in coming back. And we're getting back to pre-pandemic levels across the sport, especially at the shorter distance levels, which is where the sport started. So that's really exciting to see.
Well, and really, it's the future of the sport. Because as much as I love Ironman and you love Ironman, we need that welcome mat. We need that pool triathlon, that sprint distance triathlon, so that people come in and they have success and they move up the ladder. My concern over the last number of years is become so iron-centric. People go, I want to come into the sport, get my M.Dot tattoo, and get out. And they come in, they hire a coach, they're in for 6 months, they get their tattoo, and they're gone. So it isn't the lifestyle. They're not part of our family. And that's been concerning me for a number of years.
Well, and what we have to think about is the sport's an ecosystem, and every piece of the sport plays an important role. So Ironman is incredibly important. And the reason why it's Ironman-centric in the perception is because they've invested so much in media and coverage and prize money and all of these things that have given notoriety to the sport. But when we talk about the sport in general, the vast majority of races and participation is actually happening at the short distance.
Right.
And it is that entree point, and it's also not just where people come into the sport, it's where people stay in the sport. Because as much as we love these iconic destination, long distance races, the real sustainability as a lifestyle is when you can incorporate short, fun, achievable distances that don't take over your entire life. So as you experience life change, whether it's career changes, family changes, you can stay in the sport in a sustainable way while still doing long distance over time, but not making that your only identity in the sport.
It's funny, over a number of years, people talk about, we need more diversity, we need more women, we need more people of color. And I always go, you know what? The solution is we've got it already. When you look at these pool triathlons,
right,
they're cheaper, right? You get immediately 50% men, 50% women. A lot of people of color coming out and trying, because the pool is not as scary as being out there, right? You're being out in open body water, because when you're in open water, people can, you're talking glare, you're talking people hitting you in the head, every bad thing that can happen. Seaweed, kelp, cold water, big gray things.
I swim to the Jaws theme.
Always.
It's
so
terrifying.
All that stuff is a deterrent for people doing our sport. And I always look at our world as sort of this endurance entertainment marketplace.
Right.
You've got the color run, you've got obstacle course racing, we've got triathlon, you've got running, and now you've got gravel. You got all these different ways for people to spend their endurance dollars. It makes it harder when you're talking, okay, I got to go to a triathlon, I got to pay my money, I got to get there at 4 a.m, my wave starts at 9, I got to find park. There's a lot of stuff associated with our sport. How do we overcome that?
Well, what I would hope your audience thinks about is you connect with a lot of passionate athletes, and it's those people who started races 20 years ago, 30 years ago. They were people like you and I who were passionate about the sport, who saw a need and wanted to create community, and they found a pool, or they found a lake, or they found some body of water, and they put on a short, easy, accessible distance race, and that's how the sport really grew. And so what I think is important is we need to get back to thinking about Ironman is incredible. Kona is just iconic. I've got the bug. I can't wait to try and qualify for 2025. And this exists because of all the entrepreneurs and grassroots based people who started events that grew. And what we need to do is encourage people, club owners, coaches, and individuals who are passionate about the sport, go and figure out how to start a local race. It's actually not that challenging to find a pool where you can shut down a short distance bike course, and it can be multiple laps. And you mentioned off-road. A lot of people have mountain bikes, gravel bikes are the #1 selling bike right now. Go find a lake with access to trail and just do something small, because that's what's going to invite more people into the sport.
Some of the initiatives, USA Triathlon, you've got your NCAA program. We'll start there. Talk about the NCAA program. 40 schools. We're talking 9 women per school. Obviously showcasing women through the collegiate system, but also the idea is to be a pipeline, right, to create the next Olympians for the U.S.
Well, when I think about what USA Triathlon is responsible for, it's for growing the sport and making sure that the sport has sustainable pathways that have longevity to them. And so luckily we had an incredible board and staff that saw the opportunity in NCAA. More than a decade ago. The organization has committed nearly $4 million in investing and funding universities to start NCAA women's programs. We are an emerging sport, about ready to apply for championship level sport. And so that's where the NCAA really takes it over and has a championship level annual championship. And so we're very close to that. And it's really exciting because it's not only a pipeline and a pathway for women at the elite level, but it also showcases our sport in a way that we can potentially get more young people into the sport, which is exactly what we need to be doing.
One of the groups, and one of the things I love, I go to the collegiate club races, right? We have the Triton Man in San Diego, and there's nothing better than seeing the Cal Berkeley Tri Club with 150 members. And I look at those clubs and I go, those are the folks that are going to fill up our corrals for the next couple decades.
Yes.
And they love our sport. And there's USC and UCLA and San Jose State and Arizona. I love that. I love seeing how enthusiastic I was doing one of the races, and there was 3 kids past me, and their ages didn't add up to mine, right? I've got my 72 on my calf, and they're like 18, 19, 20. I'm like, I need a couple more. But that's the future.
Yeah.
To me, NCAA is great. Is there more investment coming in for the clubs? Because that, to me, is the future.
I think clubs, I agree with you, they are the future, because as big as NCAA will be, we could double where we are today and we'll be at 80 universities.
Okay.
And those are for young women. When we think about collegiate club, we have just over 150 collegiate club. That should be 1,200. And that's
No
for
question.
men and women.
Yep.
And that's what really grows the base of the sport. And actually, I know that Ironman is also very focused on helping to support and grow the collegiate sports space, because they see that as the future
That's
of the
their
sport
future.
as well. And the younger age group is actually one of our fastest growing age groups. And
Good.
so we're very excited to see that, because we have seen the sport aging over time, and we're starting to see that young base come into the sport, which is really exciting.
Speaking of aging, most of our great race directors, Terry Davis from Wildflower, Rob Vigorito, Bill Fulton before he passed, they started these events in the 80s, and they're gone or they're on their way out from doing races anymore. That getting someone to understand that this can be a vibrant business opportunity to be a race director so far has been tough. Are you seeing younger race directors coming in?
We are seeing some, but we need more.
We need a lot more,
and,
right?
And it's hard. This is a hard business.
So hard.
For those of you who came out this morning to see the underwear run, that staff had been out there since probably 4 o'clock in the morning.
Easily.
For a little fun run.
And been working on it for weeks and months.
Exactly, and it's just, I don't think people realize the intensity of these jobs, and also these are entrepreneurs behind these races, and they're putting their livelihoods on the line to put on race experiences for us. So my number one feedback is make sure you're kind and supportive and appreciative of your race directors. But second is, because it's a hard job, we do see these older race directors starting to age out, and maybe their kids don't want to take over the business, or maybe it's too hard to sell the business and they just let it go. And so that's why it's even more important that we really encourage and develop this younger generation of people who can start to build experiences for us to participate in.
So when somebody reaches out, or like my feeling is these pool triathlons, some funding coming from USA Triathlon for a race director to say, hey, let's do an entry-level race, let's do a pool triathlon. Because I know Steve Del Monte did after my badgering for years, I show this video on pool triathlons that show, look at the demographics here, look at all these people, and it's 1,000 people doing the Tinsel Triathlon. Some funding potentially to help race directors put on one pool triathlon, just see how, because it'll be a feeder for your event, but we'll give you the details on how to do it.
Well, real quickly, I want to give a shout out to Steve Del Monte that you just mentioned. He produces a huge women's
1,500, no,
race.
1,700 last I checked.
Incredible in Philadelphia. And actually, my first ever triathlon in 2003 maybe was the Philadelphia Women's Triathlon.
Yes.
Now, at the time, it was in a river. But the point is that he was a race director and entrepreneur who invested in seeing there was an opportunity to grow women's sport.
Yep.
And everybody said a pool swim can't be done with more than a few hundred people. And he's proven that that's possible.
Absolutely.
So to go back to answer your question, at USA Triathlon, we have a foundation, and it funds 3 key pillars. One is youth, the other is diversity, equity, access, and inclusion, and the third is high performance, elite Olympic and Paralympic hopefuls.
Yep.
And so one of the things that we do consistently is we do fund race directors to support youth initiatives, because that's a really big focus for us.
Absolutely.
Over COVID, we gave away $100,000 in grants to race directors. So we're always looking for ways to help support race directors. The reality is, it's impossible to fund every single race initiative. But what we can do is, if they call us and say, I want to start a race, we can give them best-in-class resources on how to do it. We can help support and guide them in the process, and we can connect them to mentors, fellow race directors who've experienced the same challenges, to help guide them in their efforts.
We've been very fortunate going back to the identification program where Barbara Lindquist reached out to swimmers and runners, reached out to Gwen Jorgensen and Katie Zafaris and Summer Rappaport, and Summer Cook at the time, and basically said, would you like to learn this silly sport called triathlon? And Gwen came out to the training center and learned how to ride a bike and ended up winning the gold medal. Katie has a silver and a bronze. And that program has worked for women. But when it comes to the guys, you can't compete with a Javier Gomez and Alistair Brownlee when you're coming out of college.
Right.
You have to be 7, 8, 9 years old. You have a podium project, which seems like it's doing some great work. that investment in the youth and getting people to understand that the goal is when you're 18, 19, 20, but the goal starts now when you're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Right. And here's the hard thing when you look at European athletes, which our sport at the Olympic level has become so European-centric. Yes. And those athletes are competing at the highest level in draft legal racing every month throughout the season since they're kids.
Exactly.
And we don't have that. And that's one of the challenges of we're a huge country. It's very spread out. It's very decentralized. And that's one of the challenges we have is how do we get these young kids racing against high-level competition from a young age? You look at Kevin McDowell, who was our highest placed or highest, how do you say it? He got sixth in the Olympics.
Yeah, he got sixth in the Olympics, yes.
So he's the most well-placed man in the Olympics. It took him something like 70 international races to become an Olympian. That's very expensive. And so thankfully we've had generous donors. We're able to now have something called the Mallow U23 program that's funding young up-and-coming athletes to be able to go race at those highest levels.
That's important.
Because training and racing, as you know, are two very different things.
And the hard part is all of those ITU races, WCTS, WTCS, whatever they call it now, they're all in Europe. Right? So for our guys to get over to Rome or wherever, it's so ridiculously expensive.
Well, think about it here in Kona, how we're all struggling with the time change, right? Like everybody's got at least a 3-hour time change to be here, and you physically feel it. It changes how you process food. It changes how you process sleep, how your body processes movement, all of those things. And our athletes, they're having to do that every single weekend as they look at competing across the world, primarily in Europe, but also in Asia and South America. And that's really challenging, and you can't simulate that in training. You have to do it racing, and it's expensive and it's challenging, and that's something that the U.S. is really focused on.
Race directors, after COVID, we lost in San Diego, we lost Super Frog, Super Seal, Carlsbad Triathlon, Imperial Beach Triathlon. So many events went away. The positive is maybe there are too many events, and these other events will fill up, which is what we hope for. The promotion for the sport. Is there an investment from USA Triathlon or from the foundation into growing? Because I think there's, when it comes to media, I don't think we do a good job, to be honest. Creating media for the fittest sport in the world and the fittest people in the world and a lifetime fitness sport. When you're a runner at the age of 50, you're not getting faster. But as a triathlete, I can be faster at 60 and 70 because I can buy a faster wetsuit, buy faster wheels, get a better bike, now get plated shoes. I can be better than I was 20 years ago.
Right.
I think that story needs to be told. I think we can do a better job selling the sport of triathlon, and I'm sure you agree.
I couldn't agree more. And first, I don't want to downplay the impact that your media is having on the sport. You are growing the sport by what you're doing here with Breakfast with Bob and CAF. And there are so many other organizations investing in media right now, and that is exactly what the sport needs. Not only to have visibility, but to also show commercial partners that these are commercially viable events and businesses to invest in, and athletes. And so I think that's very important for us to think about the future of the sport. To lose those races you talk about is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to start a race. These races that have gone away, they've been around for 20 years or more, and they have so much sweat equity in them, and so it's heartbreaking to see those go. But USA Triathlon, when I think about what we need to be best in the world at, we need to serve all of our members, and at the core of it, we have to serve race directors because our entire sport hinges on races.
They're the endangered species of our sport. There's no question. And they need to be,
when I think about what we should be doing, we need to be promoting races at the grassroots regional level so that every participant is aware of the races in their area, and we get more people racing more often in local races and pulling in aspirational distance destination events like this, but really focused on helping support and promote race directors locally throughout the year, as well as creating series and other opportunities to elevate certain races. We created a state championship series. Every one of those races is seeing more than a 10% boost this year.
That's wonderful.
Because of the marketing we're doing. Creating series, a women's series, a gravel series, a youth series, and all of those races are also seeing increases in participation. And I think that's something we need to continue to do well and continue to do more of.
Love it. Love your passion. I think we'll keep growing this sport together.
I hope so.
Victoria Brumfield has been our guest. Poncho Man, take us out.
Wasted away again in Margaritaville. searching for my breakfast with Bob.
And Punch Man.